uh, like a moderator on the show, and this is a question and answer show. We're discussing on the topic of hidden connections determining our Earth life. And I've got two colleagues with me joining, that's Brother Gregory and Brother Femi. So I'll be asking them questions, the questions that I have, and also any question that you may put forward. So please do join us with your questions. So my first question is to Brother Gregory. Brother Gregory, are you there? Hello, Brother Gregory, can you hear me? Okay, can anyone, Brother Femi, are you there? Can anybody hear me? One person on the phone.
Yes, sorry, we were on mute.
Oh, you were on mute. Okay, good. Yes, you can unmute now. So, okay, is Brother Gregory, are you there? Maybe I'll start with you, Brother Femi. I'll start with you, okay? So Brother Femi, let's just, before we start with the question, for the listeners let's talk a little bit widely about this topic. When we say hidden connections determine our Earth life, now we all know that we are born, from our parents, and obviously everybody has to die. So those are facts we are very well aware of. But how we get here to be born, obviously physically we know what is the cause of our birth, but there can be this is what we are talking about, the hidden connections, what leads us to be born here, like, for example, did we choose our parents, or the parents chose us, or is it actually random, or something like that? So this is what we mean by hidden connections determining our Earth life. So Brother Femi, I want to ask you, really, what is, when we are born, what exactly is the baby that that is born, and what is a human being basically when somebody is born? What is the process involved in that?
Right. Okay. Thank you for the question. As you have rightly summarized, the process of birth of a child coming into this world, and all the events surrounding the procreation of the child, and the delivery or the birth of the child into the world are things which we are quite familiar with, and which science has studied extensively. As we know today, you have all sorts of genetic engineering going on, where science is able to predetermine what the physical cloak of a baby would be like to a greater or lesser extent. However, the fundamental thing about birth is not so much the physical cloak, which is what science focuses on, but it is the motive power that exists within that physical cloak, and in effect vests life into the entity, into the child. So what exactly is that power, that being that resides within that physical cloak, and how did it get there? And as you've said, what is the connection that determines who goes where? Now, this question is actually a fairly elaborate one, but I'll try and keep it simple by breaking it down into hopefully easily understandable chunks. So, first aspect is, what is the motive power that exists within the physical body that we call a baby, or that we call a child, that then grows up to become an adult? And the simple answer is that body, inhabiting that body, is a soul or a spirit that has incarnated, was permitted to incarnate into the body for the possibility of continuing its spiritual development.
Can I just
Again,
can I just stop you for a second? So, when you say there's a spirit or a soul incarnating into that baby, it gives the suggestion that it already exists before the birth. So, is that the case there? Just to
yes, indeed, yes, indeed. As many know and many understand, the human being, or Earth man, as we know ourselves to be, many already recognize that it is not the physical cloak that is the person. The physical cloak is an outer shell that actually gives the inner man, the real spiritual core, the possibility of being able to function here on Earth. So the spirit, which is the core, the real essence of the human being, is an entity that is meant to live and exist eternally. And so, why do we come? The simple reason is for the opportunity for that spirit to be able to develop all its latent abilities and to become perfect, to attain perfection in the process. For a spirit that has the possibility of existing eternally, it is not going to develop all those capabilities within a short span of 60, 70, 80, or 100 years. It has much more time to be able to go through and develop those qualities. And so from the creation, from when that spirit issued from the creator and it journeyed down here to the material world to begin its process of development and growth, it has been given the opportunity to continue that process of development and growth. And as many again know and recognize, over the millennia, the concept of rebirth, or the concept of reincarnation, is something which is a reality. All that it essentially is, all that reincarnation is a spirit who has been here on earth before and has passed away, is being given the opportunity to reincarnate, to return in the process of continuing the necessary development that it must undergo to attain the perfection that is expected of it to attain by its creator. So in a nutshell, yes, the child that is being born today, the baby, the reality is that the motive core, the spiritual essence of that child has most certainly been here on earth before, and it is not its first time of coming. So I hope that helps to clarify your question.
Yes. I just, because, people think the birth is the beginning of life, or they may think that, some people may think that. And then when you say a soul is incarnating, it's obviously implying that the soul was there before the birth. So that's, and you've already said that the soul is already eternal, and you've sort of explained that already. So obviously,
yes, and indeed, you are right, and the people are right when they think that birth is the beginning of life, because birth is the beginning of life for that particular physical body. That physical body was dormant, was lifeless until it was vested with life, and that life, of course, as we've said, is the spirit that becomes absorbed into that physical body to give it life, which we then all experience when the child is born by the mother into the physical world. So it is for those who are purely focused on the physical, on the immediately visible events and manifestations to the physical eye, that would be seen as the beginning of that life. But there is so much more that is involved in that child actually being born on earth.
Good. So please continue about
right.
Explaining.
So as I said, just to break it down,
yeah.
We've talked briefly now about the purpose of birth itself, which is a unique opportunity that everybody has in their overall development and growth in order to attain spiritual perfection and to have the possibility of returning back into the spiritual world or the spiritual realm where we originally originated from. Now, as we already explained or touched on, that the expectation from the Creator, from life itself, for all its creatures, is to attain perfection. And to attain perfection, as we all know from the mundane earthly activities that we're engaged in, whether it's our profession or whether it's our institution of learning, it's actually a challenge. We make mistakes, we learn from the mistakes, we move on, we grow in the process. It is exactly the same that happens from a spiritual perspective. However, we happen to have a huge amount of law and a huge amount of guidance in the process of determining where we incarnate when we're given the opportunity to come back to this world. And so, in the wisdom of the Creator, who created us all, the decision as to where exactly will this soul incarnate is all contained within his natural laws that governs his creation. We will touch a bit more on that during the course of the show. But the fundamental thing for the listeners to hold on to is that location, that country, that family, that cultural grouping that spirit is permitted to incarnate in is the ideal scenario that child needs to experience in order to rapidly move towards its movement towards perfection, towards its growth, towards its perfection. So creation is constantly presenting us with opportunities and with experiences that will hasten our ability to attain that perfection that is what we all need to attain. How we now use those experiences for the necessary growth now becomes an individual responsibility and becomes an individual issue. But fundamentally, we come because of the need to continue the process of development. We incarnate, we're helped to incarnate into the family in an environment that will give us the fastest opportunity of attaining that, moving towards that perfection that we need to attain. And the decision, so to speak, as to where we are incarnating is fundamentally a decision that is made in accordance with the laws, the will of the Creator for the specific benefit of that individual human spirit. Like I said, there are so many facets to what I've summarized there, which hopefully we will explore in more detail as we go through the show. But I've hopefully given a framework or a summary of what actually lies behind the process of birth and development here on this earth towards spiritual perfection.
Thank you, Brother Femi. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the spiritual discussion program, and the aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And we have a topic every week. The topic for tonight is Hidden Connections Determine Our Earth Life. So Brother Femi has been talking about birth and the spirit and the soul. And I've also got Brother Gregory with me. Brother Gregory, are you there?
Of course I am.
Okay, welcome again. So, Brother Gregory, I've got a question from a listener, and she's asking, is there an unseen guiding hand over us, gently helping to direct one's footsteps in the direction that brings us the greatest benefit towards living or experiencing the best this world has to offer, in an effort to help us, we use the word us, grow inwardly as well as on the earthly. Yeah, so the inner growth as well as inner, helping with our inner growth and also our earthly growth. So basically, I'll just repeat that question. Is there an unseen guiding hand over us, gently helping to direct us, our footsteps in the direction that brings us greatest benefits towards living and experiencing the best that this world has to offer, in an effort to help our inner as well as earthly growth? So that's to Brother Gregory.
Thanks for that particular question. First, there is the need to understand that the Creator, having made his creation available, will not just abandon his creatures in an arbitrary fashion. Therefore, he had woven into creation his laws. And there are innumerable beings. These beings are his servants. They serve him in carrying out the work that has been assigned to them. So on the one hand, we have so many other beings. And secondly, there are others who are more matured than ourselves. When the efforts of these other beings and those who are more mature than ourselves, when those efforts are united, the human spirit finds support. Therefore, it seems as if there is a gentle hand, whereas what we have are a set of hands suggesting, guiding. However, the human spirit is not forced to take a particular direction, because the human spirit has the free will to decide whether it will heed the guidance granted to it or not. Within the scheme of things, the human spirit makes a decision. Once that decision has been made, that human spirit is then guided in such a way that the returns that will come back to it, which returns are conditioned by the laws of creation will be of benefit. It means that the human spirit has the capability of learning from the decisions it has made. Some of these decisions are very lovely, some others are, or the returns of the decisions made may be harsh. But again, whether it's bitter or sweet, the human spirit has the capability of learning from it and maturing in that process. It should also know that these other beings and those fellow human spirits who are more mature than ourselves only support us to ensure that the decisions we made will be of benefit to us. Because once the decisions have been made, it streams into creation and there will be a reciprocal streaming back as to when it will return. These all vary with the regions of creation in which we are.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. I've got a follow-up question from the listener, and I know you have sort of already sort of answered it I would say, but I just want to say this question because the listener has put it forward. So if you can just answer anything further from what I'm going to ask you now. So so basically the first question was about being guided. And so the follow on from that is, if it is so that that a person is only destined to live the life that they're born into, can they or must they look for hidden connections? I'm sorry, I'm going to just start that one again. So as I said, the first question was about being guided, for our inner growth and earthly growth. So if that is so, does that mean that the person is only destined to live a life that they're born into, or must they look for hidden connections that illuminate their way out of the self-made mire of one's own sowing, whether they remember or not? So basically, in order to achieve their spiritual freedom and a happy, uplifting life, do they need to look for these hidden connections that brought them here?
Well, thanks for that particular question.
Sorry to be so long-winded, and maybe you could repeat the question in your way and then answer it that way.
Well, what one intends to do is to look at these things, is to emphasize a few more things. Maybe that will bring clarity. How does the human spirit sow? It sows by its words, it sows by its deeds, it sows by its thoughts, it sows by many of the activities it is engaged in. Brother Esturocho made it very clear that the inner core of the personality is of spirit. The spirit has a cloak. That cloak one may refer to as the soul. And here on earth, the soul uses the physical body to experience. So looking at it from three different levels, there are spiritual decisions, there are decisions which are made by the soul, and there are decisions which are also made here physically on earth. These may be referred to as three different things, although connected. When a decision is made, the returns vary. The decisions made by the spirit, the returns may come not in one earth life. Some of it may come in a different earth life. That means how it depends on how it has sown and the motive that drove it to make some of these decisions. There are decisions made here on earth which are not very deep, and those ones may be redeemed while here on earth. But we have a whole host of activities which are guided and joined by some of the beings one had mentioned earlier. So, in effect, you will find that when decisions have been made, the returns vary. It is these returns that appear hidden because we do not know when they will surface back as returns of what we had put into creation. However, one thing is very clear. The human spirit makes free decision and has a free will. So before the returns reach it, it is able to have improved itself such that when these returns come, if they are not favorable, because it has improved itself, the returning radiation will have less severe impact on it. In that case, many a thing which would have caused a catastrophe may bring joy, or you find that the particular human spirit needed to have uttered a good word to some other person. So there are so many variations of this. However, one may refer everyone back to the work in the light of truth to understand these processes. But the key thing here first is to understand the laws which govern every activity within creation.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's a spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work in the light of truth, the Grail message. And if you want to have more information on the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that. That's GRAIL message, MESSAGE.com. So grailmessage.com. Of course, we invite you also to buy a copy for yourself, so you can examine this work for yourself. And the topic for discussion tonight is hidden connections determine our earth life. So if you have any questions or comment on this topic, please do contact us on this number. In UK, you can call us, text us, or use WhatsApp. The number is in UK 079 444 313 66. And if you're contacting us from outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Brother Femi, I'm going to ask you, we've been talking about the laws of creation, laws of nature, and I just thought it'd be good to let's say what these laws are. So, Brother Femi, if you can give like a brief description or not maybe description, just outline what these actual laws are for the listeners.
Okay, thank you for the question. One of the things which I will like to do in answering that question is really to answer it from the perspective of what we're all familiar with in terms of how life on Earth works. Of course, life on Earth, the manifestation of life on Earth is actually a faint reflection of real life which exists in the spiritual world. But if we look at life on Earth, so here I am speaking from the United Kingdom, I happen to be from Africa, from Nigeria, but I'm currently based in the United Kingdom. And for any country that we choose or care to think about, the country has laws. Every country has laws and rules that the citizens or even guests are expected to live by and are expected to be familiar with. And so we're all familiar with the concept of ignorance is not a defense when we're talking about legal issues. The other interesting thing about laws as it relates to countries is that the countries that are very good at enforcing their laws and ensuring that the citizens realize the seriousness of not complying with those laws are the countries that have progressed significantly. So if I use the United Kingdom as an example, which probably has one of the most transparent and one of the more robust and fair legal systems in the world, the necessary checks and balances are there, and the citizens, generally speaking, comply with them, which in turn makes the individual existence in the country somewhat more harmonious than it would otherwise have been, and creates a pleasant environment for everybody. If, on the other hand, we were to look at some other countries where the rule of law has broken down, we're all familiar with what goes on there. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we talk about laws, these are absolutely fundamental for any structure that we look at, for the structure to operate in a consistent manner, for the structure to be understandable by whoever is involved in either upholding or participating in that structure, and for it to be maintained. So when we talk about creation, when we talk about the universe, whether it's the physical universe that science studies, or the wider, or creation in its wider context, including all the spheres that science does not even recognize because science is not able to analyze it, since science only focuses on that which is physical, tangible, material, the fact remains that there are absolute laws that governs everything. The earth revolves around the sun. It does so in 365 and a quarter days. The sun of our solar system revolves around a bigger center, and that's why science is able to calculate space-related phenomena reasonably accurately because of the laws that exist. So, when we talk about spiritual laws, there is actually nothing unique or nothing amazing. There should be nothing amazing about these concepts, because these are things which, on a day-to-day basis, we all experience. We go to work, if we're at work, or if we're students, we go to university. They all have rules. They have rules that we must abide by. And if we fail to abide by the rules, then there are consequences, generally unpleasant consequences, that we have to suffer. And it's the same thing with spiritual laws. So what are these laws that are woven into our existence from a spiritual perspective, which is what this show is about? I think the most fundamental law that governs everything, or that covers everything that happens from a spiritual perspective, is the law of love. The law of love. So any religion, it doesn't matter what religion it is, as long as it is a religion that is aspiring to help the individual to reattain a spiritual state of perfection, will always put the concept of love at the center of the religion. And so, as I explained earlier on, when I was discussing about the processes that kicks in determining not only which family a human being or a human spirit incarnates into, but also determining which culture, which nation, and so on and so forth. All of these factors are weighed, and it is the law of love that fundamentally makes that decision for that individual. Because the love, as I explained earlier on, is attempting to put that human soul in a scenario, in a situation where it is most able to attain perfection at a much faster pace than would otherwise have been if it was not put into that scenario. Of course, the individual needs to make the effort as it develops to maximize the opportunities for growth that has been offered, that is being offered to it. And of course, if it does not do that, which unfortunately most of us don't, then the individual only has themselves to blame. But further, if one looks at the law of love, it can then be broken down into other laws. And those laws are actually manifesting in the physical as well. So when we talk about scientific theories or scientific hypotheses and researches, essentially all this is purely an attempt to understand the consistency of a law that has already been woven into creation from eternity. And so every scientific research that results in the recognition of a scientific law is a part of the laws of creation that has been woven there from time immemorial. But looking at it from a global perspective, as I've talked about the law of love, there is the law of density, which again, I'm sure that we're all familiar with. That which is light tends to float at a higher level than that which is heavier. And so from a spiritual perspective, a spirit that is light and noble and longing for its return to its source, which is in the lighter regions, would naturally be lighter than that which is totally ignorant of its source, or which may unfortunately be actively indulging in negative activities that weighs down the spirit. And so when we actually talk about somebody having a sense of being weighed down by an issue or by an event, these are all spiritual activities that are going on, which is not necessarily visible to the physical eye. So the law of density is a fundamental one in terms of our spiritual development. A key one, which is actually, again, very important when we're talking about the reincarnation of a human being, is what is called the law of reciprocal action, or we can also describe it as the law of sowing and reaping. Because every action, every word, every thought that issues, that emanates from a human spirit, from a human being, is connected to that human being. And the whole process of growth and maturing is the opportunity that is given to that human being to experience the effect of that which has emanated from it. And so where the human being has created or has, well, I shouldn't use the word create because we don't create, we form. Everything has already been created right from time immemorial. So a human being that generates a thought or speaks a word or actually performs an action has basically set something in motion. And the result of what he or she has set in motion will come back his or her way so that they can partake in the joy that their actions created, or in the not so pleasant experiences that their action may have created for others. And this is fundamental in this whole concept of reincarnation, because whatever we do and whenever we die or we pass away from this earth does not change the connection that exists between our actions and what we will need to experience. A newborn baby is still connected with his prior actions. And that again explains why practically every single human being's scenario is totally different. It is different because of the way we have created these things from prior times. So going back to the key question, which is, what are these laws? So we've talked about the law of love. We've talked about the law of density now. We've talked about the law of reciprocal action that says whatever a man soweth, that shall he reap. And of course, as the Bible says, that he will reap it 70 times, 7 times. Because indeed, if I sow 1 grain of maize, of corn, when the ear of corn is ready for harvesting, I don't just get 1 back, I get multiples back. And in a similar way, from a spiritual perspective, the same principle applies. You do good, you enjoy the benefit of the goodness in multiple ways. And similarly, if it's a negative act, you suffer the consequences. Another key law that operates, again, in the process of a child being born or a child incarnating, is what we call the law of homogeneity. In normal English culture, or in fact in any culture really, it doesn't really matter what language we're talking about, there are certain concepts. For instance, like father, like son, show me your friends and I will tell you who you are, and so on. These clearly demonstrate that over the millennia, human beings on earth recognize that there is a commonality between people that tend to group together, that tend to find themselves being attracted together, which is defined as the law of homogeneity. And so, again, from the perspective of birth on earth, and the hidden connection that comes in, if one, for instance, looks at a father who happens to be a smoker, he happens to be a chain smoker, who is in very close proximity of the mother who is carrying the infant in her womb. At the point in time when a spirit is going to incarnate in the body of that baby, the smoker, the smoking father, may have such a strong influence through his ability to attract a spirit that has the desire to be able to smoke as well. And so, if indeed such a spirit incarnates within the body of the child, as that child grows, it begins to manifest these kind of tendencies that the father has been exhibiting. And so the law of homogeneity is what has actually kicked in that scenario. It is not a question of the father having genetically given his child that tendency to want to smoke, but it is really, from a spiritual perspective, it is the law of homogeneity that is being manifested there. So, like I said, what I've summarized there are the key principal laws that essentially governs everything, any aspect of human affairs, whether here on earth or in the beyond. These laws operate consistently. They have been there right from the beginning and will always be there. All we do on earth in our scientific endeavors is to understand and to investigate minute aspects of the manifestation of these laws. So I will like to encourage the listeners to look at the Grail message, which clearly explains what these laws are in a way that the reader should hopefully be able to understand how they apply to his or her day-to-day existence, and can use that as a mechanism for improving upon their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the spiritual discussion program on Tuesday night. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. And you can find out more about the Grail Message or get a copy yourself by going to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic for discussion tonight is hidden connections determine our earth life. And I'd just like to let's say, give a little health warning about the whatever is said on the show. Everything that anybody speaks on the show, giving their answers, explanations, and so on, this is according to their own understanding. And we really urge any person who wants to really examine the Grail message, we ask you to examine the Grail message for yourself so you can verify this with yourself and not to rely on our answers. Our aim is to introduce you and give you a little piece of our understanding from the Grail message and share that with you. So, Brother Gregory, I want to sort of challenge some of the things we have been saying in our show so far. And the reason is that, as you know, the topic is hidden connections determining our earth life. Now, we know on the physical level, everybody knows that we have a body and how we are born on the physical way. And we have described the spiritual aspect of our life. But I want to explore that a bit more. So, for one, let's say we have made an assertion, or even let's call it an assumption, that a human being is a soul or a spirit. But none of us can see a spirit or a soul, there's no way of seeing that, So I'm not going to completely ask you to prove that we are a spirit or a soul, but I want to ask, how can we, know that that is what we are? If somebody says that you're a spirit or a soul, how can you sort of know that it is right, or or it may not be right, because we can't test that, you can't see the spirit. So how is it possible to see that? And also, just a little bit more on that. We talk about ego, so when we talk about ego, I think everybody knows that is not our body that we are referring to and not our brain that we are referring to. So maybe you could point us in the right direction, Brother Gregory, about how can we know that actually we are a spirit, and even though we can't see that.
Thanks for that question. How can we know that the personality is of spirit? You mentioned that we cannot see. That raises some real questions. No one has seen the wave. Here we are making discussions, and yet with our physical eyes, we cannot see the waves, the radio waves traveling from one place to the other. The vibrations of this wave do not lend themselves to our physical eyes. Yet, there is evidence that these radio waves exist and they carry energy from one point to the other. So, what is required is evidence. Again, we all think. It means we all accept that there are thoughts. And none of us has seen, has held our thoughts. Yet we believe. Yet there is evidence. We are very clear about the concept of thoughts. Which thoughts are tied to the capacity of the brain. Now, with these very simple examples, one now says that the inner motive that sets the physical body into activities is of spirit. It is that which energizes the physical body. That does not mean we are now able to see physically this inner core. Like has been discussed, there is the law of homogeneity. One may now refer to the word perception. Physical reality can be perceived by physicality. Spiritual realities can be perceived spiritually. So it goes on and on. What is observed is the effects of the spirit on physical reality. The spirit is able to energize, to set into motion the activities that the spirit, that the physical body should engage in. Therefore, one can say in all clarity that it is the spirit, it is the inner core, it is that which guides, which activates, which animates the physical body. for many who are searching for further proofs, they themselves will have to understand that you cannot see the spirits with your physical eyes because these are different species. But the spiritual eye can recognize that which is of spirit. The ethereal eye can recognize that which is ethereal, and the physical eye can recognize that which is physical or gross material. So that is the fundamental structure of creation.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. Okay, I'm going to go to Brother Femi now. Let's go to more, let's say, some more practical things about, let's say, our family and people around us. So basically, Brother Femi, do we choose our parents or the parents choose us? How does that work? That's to Brother Femi.
Okay.
I'm talking.
Thank you
I'm
for
obviously
that.
not talking the birth process. So what happens?
Yes.
What happens there, basically?
Do we choose our parents, or do our parents choose us? That's in many ways actually quite a loaded question. But again, we will attempt to simplify the question to be able to reach an answer, which we'll then make at the end of it. So, do we choose our parents? Do our parents choose us? One of the things which, of course, hopefully the listeners will be familiar with is this concept of free will, where we know, hopefully, that one of the unique characteristics of a spirit being, is that it is vested with the ability to make choices. It has what we call a free will. So indeed, one could ask the question that who chooses who? Is it the spirit in the child that is exercising his or her free will to choose the parents, or vice versa? Now, the interesting thing, of course, that we all hopefully should know or have experienced at one time or the other, is that when a couple are expecting, when the mother becomes pregnant and is expecting a baby, how does the mother consciously choose the spirit that incarnates in that body? And the simple answer is no, she doesn't. For a few mothers, they may have a great longing for a particular type of child. They want a peaceful baby, they want a healthy baby, they want an intelligent baby, and so on and so forth. So the mother may, generally speaking, be preoccupied with the type of personality of the child that she would love to have. But fundamentally, as we all know from our day-to-day experiencing of pregnant people, they are not in a position to specifically say, I want this particular spirit or that particular spirit to incarnate in my womb. No, she can't. She can pray or have the desire for a particular type of personality, but she does not specifically choose who that individual or who that spirit will be. Now, so who makes the choices? I already indicated this in my earlier answers. The law of love is actually what decides. And again, like I said earlier on, what the law of love is attempting to do for us is to place each spirit in a scenario with the family that is most likely going to give that spirit the best opportunity to acquire the experiences that it needs in that particular lifetime towards its overall spiritual development. So that you are in a specific family is actually out of love that you find yourself in there. And even though you might think that your family is not ideal for you because you have so many issues with them, they get you really upset or they get you really annoyed, that does not take anything away from the fact that that family which you find yourself in is the ideal family that you need to be in for your personal spiritual development. We've talked about the law of homogeneity and how that plays a part in this decision. We've also talked about the law of reciprocal action, and again, how that plays a part in the decisions governing where a particular human spirit will incarnate, which family at what time, and so on and so forth. All the finer details surrounding the birth of that particular spirit. One final thing that I would like to add to this, again, which is out of love, is the recognition of our weaknesses and the opportunity that is given to us to rapidly overcome them. When the spirit incarnates in a physical body and starts its process of physical growth and hopefully spiritual growth as well, there comes a time when the spirit begins, or the person begins, to recognize tendencies or characteristics that it finds unpleasant, which may actually irritate that person very deeply. So like I said earlier on about, we hear of siblings that don't like each other, that find each other's company very unpleasant, various types of disharmonies that may exist within a family scenario. All these are actually helps for the individual human spirit, because that which the person finds annoying, finds irritating, it is actually a wake-up call for that individual that those very tendencies exist within him or her. And so it is an opportunity, it is a blessing for us when we find ourselves in those cases, rather than getting mad and upset about it, we would do a lot better to be introspective and to take a totally different view as to, I will not be upset about what this person has done, but I would actually use this as an opportunity to see how I can improve myself in that regard. And again, that you are being put into the mix. You are being put into a scenario where you are interacting with those that you are homogeneous with. The likelihood is that the weaknesses that they exhibit are weaknesses that are present in you as well. So overall, creation in the love of the Almighty has actually and is constantly attempting to make life so easy for us. It is attempting to give us that opportunity to mature and become what we need to be in the shortest possible time. But of course, unfortunately, we don't see this for a whole myriad of reasons. We don't see it. We don't cooperate with creation itself. We don't even know the laws that governs creation. So we continue to fall foul of these laws. And in the process, we injure ourselves and we create more complications in our lives. And so, dear listeners, it is your personal responsibility, just like it is mine, to acquaint myself with what are these laws that actually governs this creation that we live in, or this world that we live in, from a spiritual perspective. From a physical, earthly perspective, yeah, you can go and find out from a lawyer or go and buy a book and read about it. But we are fortunate that from a spiritual perspective, we do have the book called The Grail Message, which clearly explains these laws, how they operate in every facet of our existence. And by understanding them better, we are in a position to minimize the number of mistakes and errors that we make, and hopefully maximize the amount of goodness that we create, and in the process, make our personal lives pleasant and joyful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. I've got another question for you, Brother Gregory, and it's sort of following on from my last question to you about, what is, spirit, where we can't actually see the spirit. And so the next question coming from there is, what is the spiritual world? How come we are not aware of it? And how do we discover it in this world, the earthly world, the spiritual world? And so basically, so I'll just repeat it again. What is the spiritual world? How come we are not aware of it? And how do we discover it in this world on the earth? That's to Brother Gregory.
Thanks. The basic thing here is, the question is, what is the spiritual world? Again, the addition to it, how come we are not aware of the spiritual world? Everyone, or most people, are acquainted with the word energy. Yet, no one has seen energy or talk about energy as an everyday word and claim to understand the word energy. Energy is spirit. The energy which is discussed of a low kind is spirit. Spirit is that which animates this physical body. Spirit is the inner core of the personality. In the process of cooling off, as we all know, things coagulate. They become denser in accordance with the laws of creation. When things cool down and they coagulate and they become denser, we are able to perceive that which is of homogeneity with the same level of denseness with our physical eyes. We're able to see them. Way we are able to hear music. It's not the same thing as to see music. So one will be talking of vibrations. The vibrations of the spirit is of much finer texture than those of the physical. Therefore, the physical is unable to perceive it at that same level. The physical world which is discussed must be different from the physical. The spiritual world which is meant here must be different from the physical world that we inhabit. To understand it right, one must discuss the structure of creation. In the structure of creation, there is the power that energizes everything. In the cooling down of the radiations of this power or of this energy, we have at that very high level that which is of spirit. In the further cooling down, we have another level which one may refer to as that of the animistic. And in the further cooling down, we have that which we are very familiar with, the world of matter. Each of these divisions has subdivisions. In the world of matter, amongst the lowest is gross matter, which you and I are familiar with. And the vibrations of gross matter, one is able to perceive things with that at that particular level. So within the structure of creation, we now know that the spiritual is of the highest. That is the source, or that is the starting point of the inner core of man, the human spirit, in which it has set out from there in order to mature, to learn to use the innate abilities which have been sown into it. But in order to be able to walk in the spheres below it, it needs the covering. So when it sets out and comes below, it takes up the first covering, the animistic covering. As it comes lower, it also takes the ethereal covering, and finally it has the physical body through which it's able to experience, it's able to make itself known to other people, other personalities that have come to experience here. So that is the spirit. Generally, one may say spirit is energy. When the laws of creation are discussed, it is not that we have one law for animals, another law for matter, another law for different. No. It is one simple law which manifests differently at different levels. So you find the laws of creation also applies to the laws of biology, of physics, of social interaction. And you then find that these laws are what conditions everything. It is these same laws that conditions the spiritual realm, the animistic realm, the ethereal realm, and also the gross material realm. It is these same laws that help, that conditions the coming into being of the human spirit, even at that level in the spiritual realm or in the birth of a baby. It is quite interesting in these discussions, we talk about the birth of a baby as if it is something which is remote, forgetting that we ourselves were once babies. And in the growth and maturing, we have come to our present state. And therefore, it is helpful for each listener to reflect back their perceptions at an early age, what they were able to perceive, the conceptions they had, the guidance that has been made available, which they are able to perceive. With the collection of all these, the human spirit is able to mature and see the love that guides everything that exists. Proofs, as are required, basically are those that the intellect, which is the tool that man has, that it wants to have evidence. But proof is only possible when one is discussing homogeneity. You can prove that you can hear music when you have ears, because the ears are tuned to physical vibration. You can prove that you can smell something because the nostrils are tuned. You can also prove, even within the earth, that you can see something because the vibrations of light affect vision. In a similar way, in order to have the proof of the spirit, one requires that which is of spirit, the inner core of man, the deep inner sensing, the deep inner feelings. That provides the proof or the evidence of what spirit is. But in general, spirit is energy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio, the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. And the topic for discussion tonight is Hidden Connections Determine Our Earth Life. And we'd love you to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here is in UK. The number is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're contacting us from outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Brother Femi, I was wondering if there's something you could read for the listeners from the Grail Message. with related to tonight's topic. Is there anything you have?
Just a minute whilst I bring up something. If you could please continue whilst
yes, that's fine. So, and I'll also just check with Brother Gregory. Is there anything you have that you might want to read as well from the Grail message? It doesn't have to be ready just now. I just want to check with you. Yeah. Oh, okay. I will not. Brother Gregory, are you there? Just to check.
Okay. Yes, I am.
Yes,
sorry, I was
right.
Tuned off. I have taken off the microphone, so I won't.
All right, I can hear you. Yeah, just to check if you have anything for the listeners to read.
I will. I have something, but not now.
Not just now. That's fine. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, if you want to get a copy of the Grail message or want to get more information, we recommend this website for you if you like, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. It's www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. So are you okay ready now, Brother Femi?
Yes, indeed, I am.
Okay.
I will just read a paragraph or two from the Grail message, which hopefully will help to bring some more clarity into our deliberations this evening. Right. Men speak of merited and unmerited fate, of reward and punishment, of retaliation and karma. These are only different names for one of the laws which governs creation, the law of reciprocal action, a law existing from the very beginning of creation, inseparably interwoven with the great and never ceasing process of development, and forming an integral part of creation and development itself. As a gigantic system of the finest nerves, it holds together and animates the mighty universe in continual motion, in a never ceasing give and take. The great bringer of truth, Jesus of Nazareth, said simply and plainly, and yet so aptly, what a man sows, that he must reap. These few words reflect exactly the process of development and life in creation. What they express is inextricably interwoven in all existence. And so, dear listeners, that is just a short reading from the Grail message that explains the exacting nature of the law of reciprocal action in relation to what we call natural reward or punishment. Also the concept of karma, which many people are familiar with. So these are not mysterious concepts or mysterious events, for want of a better expression. These are natural occurrences in creation, in our day-to-day living, that we would all do well to acquaint ourselves with more actively and hopefully begin to get a better insight into how things manifest around us and how things are influenced by our own actions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. I've got a question now for you, actually. People say live life to the full, and they usually mean focusing on their earth life because that's what they mostly know about, really. So, so does that mean that on the earth we should be focusing on earthly things, and then really we should just consider the spiritual things when we go into the beyond?
Well, again, as we've consistently been saying, the fundamental reason why we are here on earth is of a spiritual nature. And so, yes, we live in a physical material world, and we will be rather foolish to ignore that which is of a physical material nature. Of course, we must pay attention to the demands of our daily existence. However, the overriding consideration must be our spiritual growth and development. And so when one hears the expression, live life fully, this is absolutely true. We should live life fully. But unfortunately, again, due to the various distortions that human beings are prone to introducing into noble concepts, people tend to see living life fully as, so to speak, enjoying life in a way where you're indulging in that which is not necessarily beneficial to the soul or to the spirit. So when one considers and understands what life really is in its true meaning and embraces life with all that is within us, then the need to live life fully will become a natural part of our existence. However, like I said, all that we then do will be focused on ensuring that with each day that rolls by, we continue to do that which is our fundamental responsibility, which is the development of our spirit being towards the perfection that is expected from us by our Creator. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. Brother Gregory, I want to continue the thread from Brother Femi. So I'm going to, again, it's going to be a bit of a long question, but I'm going to go through it. So what is life all about? I mean, we talked about development there. We've said, what is our task? So again, on the earth, we're growing from childhood to adulthood, learning, working, playing, resting, having a family, bringing up the next generation, enjoying the surroundings, following a belief or religion, and then making this world a better place to live in. So I know Brother Femi has pretty much touched on it already, but I just want to, we have the spiritual aspect of us, and then we have the earthly aspect as well. And obviously, Brother Femi is very much emphasized that it's the spiritual purpose which is the important purpose. So how do we, let's say, in our daily life with the earthly things that we deal with, have the spiritual goal in our mind. So, so for example, like we've said, having having children, growing from a child to an adult, learning, working, and so on, and improving the world around us, because obviously every generation wants to live better than the generation before. So this is like a constant battle or improvement that we are always doing. So is so please, yeah, if you can tell us more, how can we have the spiritual aspect in this earthly world that we live in?
Thank you. The question, though, looks long-winded, but intrinsically means, what is life? What are we doing here? One should understand, again, that the inner core of man is spirit. And therefore, what you then find in almost all scenarios here on earth is that the physical body is only an instrument which enables the spirit to experience physically here on earth. So the impressions which the spirit furnishes passes through the back brain to the frontal brain. The frontal brain now executes the instructions which have been passed from the spirit to the external world physically. As with everything, there are responses. The reciprocal actions which come back are absorbed by the frontal brain as experiences and are supposed to be passed back to the back brain and then to the spirit. With such, one may say one lives life to the fullest. As long as there is no derangement, as long as there is that seamless movement, one lives lives to the full. Therefore, the explanation can easily be seen on what one needs to do, what the purpose of life here on earth is. For even in the mundane sense, when one goes to study, when one is experiencing, you use the experiences you have gathered first to improve your lot, to improve the concepts which come across you. And secondly, to share these concepts or these experiences with others so that they may yet see the other parts which they have not yet experienced in full, which is basically the love of one's neighbor. For each personality has something to offer to the whole. When you have the scenario where someone intends to become a teacher, he first goes to school to learn. Once he has learned enough to be able to instruct others, he leaves school and he doesn't go higher to instruct others who are higher than he himself or herself. It goes lower to instruct those who are just maturing to understand the concepts. It is the same thing with life in creation, where the human spirit set out as an unconscious spirit gem from the spiritual, coming down, passing through the animistic, and entering the world of matter, coming into the earth to experience, such that it will mature to such an extent that it's able to go back home as a self-conscious human spirit. And once it gets there, is able, through its experiences it's gained in the world of matter, and particularly on earth, to influence, to support other human spirits who are just starting that same journey. That is the purpose. For what will be the purpose if it's able to experience for itself alone without sharing? So the whole thing must be looked at in its totality rather than a one-sided view. The instrument granted to the human spirit on earth to experience first is the physical brain, the human brain that has the frontal part and the back part. One has only just mentioned a few things. It is necessary for whoever is listening to find time to examine the work in the light of truth, to get precision on these discussions. There, the complete purpose, the complete task that the human spirit has are fully and well explained. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. I just wanted to ask you, Brother Gregory, if you had something to read for the listeners from the Grail message. I think you
Thank you. There is a bit which I wanted to read, I plan to read, based on the questions that were asked. It's taken from the lecture Awake in Volume 1. And I will start from somewhere where it says, ignore the scoffers who are still strangers to spiritual life. They stand before the great work of creation, which offers us so much, like drunkards, like sick people, like blind men who grope their way through life on earth without seeing all the splendor around them. They are confused. They sleep. For how can anyone still affirm, for instance, that only what he can see exists? Thus, where his eyes perceive nothing, there is no life. That with his physical death, he himself also ceases to exist, all because in his blindness he could not, up till now, convince himself to the contrary through his eyes? Does he not already know from many things, how very limited is the capacity of the eye? Does he not yet know that it is related to the capacity of his brain, which is bound to time and space? That because of this, he cannot recognize with his eyes anything rising above time and space? Has this logical, intellectual reasoning not yet become clear to any of these scoffers? Spiritual life, let us also call it the beyond, is after all merely something that stands completely above the earthly division of time and space, and therefore requires a similar nature in order to be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Femi, there's one aspect of life I would like to sort of pursue now, which is reincarnation. We've talked about the laws, and we know that we're a spirit living on the earth in a physical body, and we know that life is about development. So are we meant to continuously be reincarnating, not necessarily always to redeem what we have done in the past, but maybe to keep growing, as because we never stop learning, we always keep growing. So are we supposed to be like permanently reincarnating, or is there some or should it be, or is there another it should be some other way?
Okay. Again, as I always like to do, I will attempt to draw from that which hopefully most listeners are familiar with, from the physical to get a better understanding of these spiritual events or these spiritual principles. Now, we've said that the main overriding requirement for a human spirit is to develop towards its perfection so that it can successfully return to its source of origin, which is the spiritual world. That is a fundamental task that each and everybody has. That the individual does not recognize this is actually nobody's fault but its own. And from time to time, as long as the spirit has not been completely covered with denseness, everyone feels a certain amount of yearning and the sense that they need to be doing something more deliberate that would liberate their person, because they seek inner joy, inner peace, and these are all aspects of one's spiritual development towards one's growth. So yes, indeed, the spirit must develop and it must move towards perfection to be able to attain a conscious existence in the spiritual realm. So does that mean that we will continue to reincarnate forever and a day as long as we haven't learned everything that we need to learn? And the simple answer to that question is no. It does not work that way. Science recognizes today that all the celestial bodies that we see or that are known have a finite existence. So even our sun that has made life possible in the physical, on this planet, has a finite existence. Sooner or later, it's going to die. It's going to burn out. And so that naturally follows that we can't continue this cycle of birth and rebirth indefinitely. And indeed, at the time when we were created, there was a time period that was allotted to us for our development, where in the wisdom of the Creator, provided we were doing that which we needed to, we would have been able to attain that perfection, and we would have become truly spiritualized entities that can consciously experience and partake in the spiritual realms. But unfortunately, due to our weaknesses, due to the inappropriate exercising of our free will, we have not attained that which was expected from us at this stage. And again, that is why the mission of Jesus Christ as an ultimate and the mission of various other truth bringers was necessary to help humans on earth with being able to retrace their footsteps back to the higher heights, which is where we really should have well been by now. So we come, we go, but eventually the possibility of being able to come and go will no longer be there because we would have exhausted that opportunity. And that is why even the Bible, as we know, and many other religions have the concept of a final judgment, because there comes a time when that period that has been allotted to the individual comes to an end, and he can no longer continue the cycle. Now, another aspect that I would like to quickly share is if we look at the school system. You start from kindergarten, from the nursery school, make your way up all the way through to the university, and maybe become a PhD holder and a professor in the process. Now, it would be totally ridiculous to pluck a 5-year-old from kindergarten and place them in a university. They would have absolutely no clue as to what's going on there because they have not matured to that state of being as at yet. And so it is that even here, when we look at our world and process of development, there are certain fundamental lessons that a human spirit needs to learn from this part of creation. And so once you have learned that which you need to learn, then you move on. And so it is very possible that at a point in time, a human spirit that has attained the development, the fundamental spiritual development that it needs to attain, would no longer have the need to be here on earth because it has truly experienced earth and has acquired that which it needs to acquire in the process of its birth and rebirth. And by now, dear listeners, the reality of the matter is that every single one of us should have attained that state of spiritual development by now. But sadly, we know that we have not. Time is running out. There is a sense of urgency in the air that says, get real spiritual knowledge. Understand how creation works. Understand how the spiritual laws operate within our day-to-day life and our existence. And we try to collaborate with these laws to work harmoniously with them so that we can hasten and speed up the necessary development that we have to go through if we do not want to perish in the process of the final judgment that ultimately will lead to the disintegration of the world of matter as we currently know it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. we've come to the end of our show, listeners. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next Tuesday as usual. So I would like to ask my fellow colleagues if they would like to say anything to the listeners as we say goodbye. That's starting with Brother Gregory.
Well, wishing everybody well and the strength for those who wish to examine the work in the light of truth. It's available in the internet. It's available as hard copies. One can only wish you all the strength to look into it because it challenges everything one think one knows.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. And Brother Femi, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
I mean, there's so much to be said and so little to be said at the same time. The key thing is the recognition that our mundane earthly lives is all governed ultimately by the spiritual. And there is therefore an urgent need for us to be more engaged and to more consciously seek spiritual knowledge. It's a journey that takes us from one step to a higher step, hopefully. And in the process, we become more aware of self and life. And I wish everyone joy and happiness for the rest of their week before we meet next week, Tuesday.
Thank you, Brother Femi. Dear listeners, yes, we will be back next Tuesday. The topic for discussion will be possessed. And just to remind you, if you want to get a copy of the Grail message or get more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, message, message.com. Thank you for joining us. I wish you all a great week. God bless. And just to let you know, this week we've been on YouTube. Yes, we've been on the website blessradio.org and tunein.com. And tonight we were live on YouTube. And you have to search Blessed Radio 1 on YouTube to actually find us live. And from now on, that will happen every week. So you can, there's another medium you can be listening on us on. So again, I wish you all a great week and look forward to joining us next week. All the best. God bless.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for my colleagues.
Bless Radio. Bless. You're in tune to Bless Radio.
Fathers, mothers, grandparents, and godparents, are you looking for a cultural environment to take the children on contact weekend? Or for the child that you have promised a special treat? Try Gold Onyx Children Cultural Film Club, Cultural Education through Film. Well, that will be on the second Saturday of the month. It starts from 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. This takes place at the exquisite lounge, 117 Bruce Grove, Tottenham, London, N17 6UR. Doors open at 2 p.m. Film starts at 2:15. The film will be followed by a discussion plus information and achievement share. Children up to the age of 18 £4. Adults £5, but free when accompanied by a paying child. We will provide free popcorn and free drinks. Hot foods can be bought at the takeaway, making it easier for those children who come straight from Saturday school or community club. For further information, visit www.goldonyx.co.uk or call 07946 670 949. Gold Onyx is looking forward to accompanying you on the Children's Culture Film Club. Stay inspired and remember not to forget.
No cigarette smoking in my room. Yeah. I still want more. Bless FM radio, play good tune.
It could go back in a Fustat, and it was made by the conquerors during the time of Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali wasn't even an Arab; he was an Albanian who took on the name Muhammad Ali. Now, when he converted to Islam to get the throne. If we go back further, not a single Hebrew was in this land until then, unless he was astray. There was a single nation. There was nobody named Abraham. Abraham's mother and father did not follow what we call Judaism today. Terah, his father, worshipped an African woman. An African woman you will see right across here called Hathor. Hathor. That's the Western spelling. The correct name is Het Heru. Hethero. You will see her and the funerary temple of Queen Admakari Hatshepsut. She is shown as a cow. And when she is shown as a woman, is an African woman with cow's ears. The best place you will see her is at a temple dedicated solely to her at a place called Dendera. Then you will see thousands of faces of her, especially in the Hypostyle Hall. The Hebrews in the first book, the book called Genesis, which means first, they showed that Abraham worshipped the golden calf in their cow.